Hey everyone, and welcome to Linguist Rising. So if you've ever tried to learn another language, you know it's a journey, right? It's filled with these amazing highs and some, let's just say, uniquely frustrating lows. Today, we're going to map out that journey. We're going to look at the science behind what we all go through as language learners so we can finally understand the road we're all traveling on together.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever had that feeling? You know the one I'm talking about. That one little mistake, maybe a pesky pronunciation that just will not go away no matter how many times your teacher corrects you. Well, I'm here to tell you, you are definitely not alone. It's a totally universal part of the process, and we're about to figure out exactly why it happens. So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this by looking at 5 key areas. First, we'll unpack why we get stuck. Then, we'll look at the grammar we all secretly try to avoid. We'll explore how our brains actually learn new words, and then get into some smart strategies for building up our vocabulary. And finally, we'll put it all together to see what the map of our learning journey really looks like.
Okay, let's dive right in with that stuck feeling. In the world of linguistics, this thing has a name, and it's a pretty memorable one: fossilization.
So fossilization? It basically means those parts of our new language that seem to harden into place, just resisting any more change, kind of like a fossil that's set in stone. This could be anything, really. A grammar rule, a word choice, or even a little bit of your accent that just decides to stick around for good.
And this isn't some new idea. The term was actually coined way back in 1972 by a linguist named Larry Selinger. He noticed that these fossilized bits and pieces can pop back up even when we think we've finally corrected them. He said they're a core feature of our inner language, which is a really cool concept. It's that unique hybrid language system each of us creates, a mix of our native tongue and the new one we're learning.
And I see this in my own learning all the time. For me, as a native English speaker, the idea of a non-count noun like homework is second nature. But when I'm speaking Spanish, where tarea can easily become tareas, my brain sometimes wants to apply that logic back to English, and out comes homeworks. It's a textbook example of a little feature that has, for me, kind of started to fossilize.
Okay, so sometimes the really fascinating part of our language learning isn't about the mistakes we make, but actually about the mistakes we don't make. This brings us to another really common behavior: learner avoidance.
It's actually a pretty clever, even if it's an unconscious, strategy. If we know a certain grammar point is a total minefield, well, we'll just find a way to talk around it. We create a little detour to get our point across. The tricky part is, this means a teacher might never even know we have a gap in our knowledge there. Check this out. Here is a perfect example. Instead of trying to build a really complex sentence with a tricky relative clause, a learner might just nod. They'll just break it down into 2 super simple, safe sentences. The girl likes the boy. She sent the boy a message. See? The meaning is totally clear, but that grammatical hurdle is completely sidestepped.
And we've got some great research that tells us why this happens. There was this landmark study back in '74 that found something fascinating. It saw that learners whose native language was really different from the target language in a specific area, like relative clauses for Chinese and Japanese speakers learning English, well, they just avoided using them. Meanwhile, Arabic speakers, whose language has a more similar structure, they'd try it more often, and so they'd fail more often and make more errors. So the big takeaway here is, making fewer mistakes doesn't always mean you're more advanced.
Okay, let's switch gears. We've talked grammar, now let's get to the absolute building blocks of language, our vocabulary. How do we really learn all the words we need to speak fluently?
I absolutely love this quote from the linguist D.A. Wilkins. It just hits the nail on the head. Grammar gives us the skeleton, sure, but vocabulary gives us the substance. Without words, we have nothing to say.
So let's talk numbers for a second. To get to a point where you can read something and really get it, I'm talking understanding about 98% of the words so you can figure out the rest from context. How many words do you think you need to know? Any guesses?
The answer is somewhere between 8 and 9,000 word families. And let's be clear, that's not just 9,000 individual words. A word family includes the main word plus all its different forms, like play, plain, player, playful. It's a huge number. And it really just puts into perspective the massive scale of what we're trying to do as learners.
And this is exactly why reading is such a double-edged sword for us. I mean, it's one of the best ways to pick up new words, but here's the catch. You need to already know about 95% of the words in a text just to understand the other 5% from context. So you have to build up that strong foundation first before reading can really start to turbocharge your learning.
And knowing a word is so much more than just memorizing a definition from a flashcard. The linguist Paul Nation actually broke it down into at least 8 different kinds of knowledge. You got to know what it means, sure, but also how to spell it, how to say it, its grammar, what other words it likes to hang out with, those are its collocations, and even its social status. Is it formal, super informal, slang? It's like this giant web of information for every single word.
So if the task is that massive, how on earth can we tackle it without getting overwhelmed? Well, that brings us to our next section, how to build that word bank the smart way.
Here's a key insight. We don't just learn isolated words. We learn in chunks. Think about it. When you're just starting out, you lean heavily on those handy little phrases, right? When I was starting Italian, a phrase like non so come si dice, I don't know how to say, was an absolute lifesaver. It's like a little pre-made tool that helps you say something complex long before you understand all the individual pieces.
The official term for these chunks is a formulaic sequence, and as the linguist Alison Ray puts it, it's a string of words we just pull from our memory as one whole unit. We don't have to stop and think about the grammar. This seriously lightens the mental load, and it lets us sound way more fluent and get our point across while our brain is still working hard in the background to figure out all the rules.
And what's really cool is we don't just stick with these simple formulas forever. We slowly start to unpack them. A beginner might start out super basic. Stamps, please. Then they learn a formula, like, I want stamps. After a while, they start unpacking it, analyzing the pieces, and they can form questions like, can you give me stamps? From there, they expand it to be more polite. And finally, they can fine-tune it into something really nuanced, like, I would like to buy some stamps, please. This right here is what language development looks like in real life.
All right, so let's zoom out now and look at the big picture. We've talked about getting stuck, we've talked about avoiding the hard stuff, and learning in chunks. What does this all mean for our journey as a whole?
Here is the single most important thing I want you to take away today. These things, fossilization, avoidance, moving through these predictable stages, they are not failures. They're not signs that you're a bad language learner. They are universal signposts. Every single person who learns a language passes them. They're just marks on the map.
I feel like this cartoon just captures the whole spirit of it perfectly. You've got the dog thinking in all its different verb forms. Woof, woofs, woofing, woofed. It's a hilarious take on what our brains are actually doing. We're taking in patterns, we're overgeneralizing rules, and slowly but surely, piece by piece, we're building a system that lets us be truly creative and really communicate.
So I'm going to leave you with this question. What about you? In your language learning journey, what's a little thing that feels like it has fossilized? Is it a pronunciation thing? A specific word? A little piece of grammar? I'd love to hear about it, so share your story in the comments. Recognizing these little signposts in our own journeys is the first step to understanding them, and understanding them is how we keep moving forward. Thanks so much for joining me.